Okay, let's take a look at midpoint. So earlier we did midpoint by finding the length. So if we had point A and B and C, and we wanted to show that B was the midpoint, we found the length of AB and of BC and then made sure they were the same. That was a lot of work, as you remember from the previous video. Here, we have a little formula that's going to provide us with the x and y value of the midpoint by just plugging in values from the two endpoints. So for example, if you want to determine the midpoint of a line segment with these endpoints, what you do is you quite simply write down the formula, which is capital M, which is much bigger than small m for slope. And you know that the midpoint formula is add up the x's, x1 and x2 of the endpoints, divide by 2, in other words, find the average. And then for the y value, you'll add up the y values and divide by 2. So let's do that. We've got here, add up the x's, divide by 2, and then add up the y's and divide by 2. So that is negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2 over 2, which still needs to be simplified, and this is 10 over 2. So those two fractions reduce to negative 1, 5. And negative 1, 5 is the midpoint. So if you had an x and y axis and you plotted this point, and this point, you would see something like this, not necessarily in a horizontal line, but you'd see 2 points, and then this point would be smack in the middle, and your eye would show you that it kind of looks like the midpoint, but here we've done the math to show that it is accurately the midpoint. So now let's try this one. What happens when we're given one end point and the midpoint? How do we find the coordinates of the other end point? Well, if this is the formula, so I'm going to write it like this. The midpoint, the x midpoint and the y midpoint value are equal to add up the endpoints, x, and find the average, and then add up the y value of the endpoints and find the average. So I'm literally going to erase and fill it in to show you how to do this, because I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write it again, and then I'm going to fill it in. Okay, so one end point of the line segment is 5, negative 7. So I'm going to erase this and this, and I'm going to put in 5 here, and here I'm going to put in negative 7. And then the midpoint is 3.5 and 1.5. So I'm going to erase this and put in 3.5, 1.5. So now we have to find the coordinates of the other x value. So here's what we're going to do. We know that 3.5 is equal to that, and 1.5 is equal to that, right? So let's do that. 3.5 is equal to x plus 5 over 2. We could put x1 or just x, doesn't matter. Let's put x1 because that's what we did. I'm going to actually make this into a improper fraction. So how do we make that 3.5? Let's do it up here. 3.5 is the same as 3.5. Is the same as 3.5, which is the same as 3 times 2 plus 1 is 7 over 2, right? So let's do that because it's so much easier to work with fractions. I know you don't really love them, but you're going to learn to. Believe it or not. So when you have two fractions separated by an equal sign, that's called a proportion. And when you have a proportion, you cross multiply to solve. So here we've got 2 times this, 2 times that, equals that times that. So that's 2x plus 10. 2x plus 10 equals 14. 2x equals 14 minus 10, which is 4. So x is equal to 2. So the x value is equal to 2. Now we're going to do the same thing with the y value. So 1.5 or 1.5, that's 3 over 2, right? I'm just going to borrow some space from here. That's 3 over 2. So 3 over 2 is equal to, that was a y, x1. And then 3 over 2 is equal to y minus 7 over 2. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. Then I'm going to distribute in my bracket, distribute out in my 2 into the bracket. And then I've got 2y equals 6 plus 14, which is 20. 2y equals 20, divide by 2, and y equals 10. So find the coordinates of the other line segment. So then here we would write E, because the other endpoint is E according to them, and the x value is 2 and the y value is 10. My advice to you is when a question gets really busy like this and you're running at it, it's kind of crunched together, if you sort of rectangle off as you get answers, it's going to help make them pop out and you'll be able to see them. So here's the actual answer here. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Vertex V of triangle UVW has coordinates 4, 6. The coordinates of the midpoint of UV are this. The coordinates of the midpoint of this are this. Find the coordinates of that. Okay, there's a lot going on here. I'm going to plot this up. It's getting too busy for my brain. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So vertex V is here. Okay, the coordinates of the midpoint of UV are 1, 6. 1, 6 is the midpoint of UV. Okay, so hold on a second. If that's V, and that's the middle of UV, then that's a horizontal line. So we know we can go like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that'll be U. Because if this is V and this is the midpoint of UV, this must be U, because now U and V have the midpoint UV. Right? Okay. Next, let me just move this 6 because it's kind of busy with this stuff up here. All right. So I hope you can see that. 1, 2, 3 in the middle, 1, 2, 3 in the middle. V, U, middle, UV. Now, the coordinates of the midpoint of VW are 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So, let's see here. I'm going to show you how to do this graphically, and then I'm going to show you how to do it with the written work. So just like we did this here and found point U, we can find point W if this is the midpoint of VW, because, check this out, from here to here is over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do it again, over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have V, which is the midpoint of these two. How much do you love that? I love that. Otherwise, you're going to need to do this for this one, and then all of this again for this one. So here's a way to do it in writing, and here's a way to do it with a picture. So again, here, when it's horizontal or vertical, you just count. And when it's on an angle, you can use the slope. So you go from one point to the other. You went left 1, down 4, so you just do it again, left 1, down 4. And that's how you do that kind of question.